Sometimes life doesn't break you with storms. It breaks you with a single sentence, spoken by someone you thought would always protect you. A sentence that doesn't shout, but quietly removes you from the place you once called home. This is a story about family, disappointment, and the moment you finally learn to draw a boundary, even if it means walking away from the people who raised you. My name is Daniel Reed, and this is the day my entire life changed. My story begins long before the day my mother told me to leave. It begins 3 years earlier, when I came back home after my life had fallen apart. I was 28, freshly unemployed after the company I worked for shut down. My relationship had ended terribly. I had used most of my savings trying to stay afloat. And in that moment of weakness, I did something I swore I'd never do again. I came back to my mother's house. I remember standing on her porch with 2 suitcases and a heart full of shame. The door opened, and she stood there, arms crossed.
She didn't hug me.
She didn't ask if I was okay. She only said, "Well, you can stay in the small room. I just cleaned it." At the time, even that felt like love. Maybe because I needed it to be love. The first few months were peaceful. I helped around the house, cut the grass, repaired small things, took her grocery shopping. She would occasionally say, "You should thank me." Not every mother lets her grown son move back. I laughed it off every time, but something about that sentence always stung in a tiny, quiet way. Still, I convinced myself this was temporary, that I'd rebuild, find a job, and move out soon. But life doesn't follow your plans. Not mine, at least. During those years, there wasn't much talking in that house. My mother and I lived together, but not together. She ate in the living room. I ate in the kitchen. Sometimes we exchanged a few words, mostly instructions. Buy milk. Take the trash out. The sink is leaking again. But never, "How are you? Do you need help? I'm glad you're here." I mistook that silence for peace. I mistook that distance for respect. But it wasn't peace. It was emotional distance wrapped in routine. One Thursday afternoon, I had just returned from a job interview. I walked inside, hopeful, maybe this one would work out. My mother was on the phone, pacing around the living room. She spoke loudly, excitedly, a tone I rarely heard from her. Yes, of course. Bring the kids. You all can stay as long as you want." I heard my brother's name. He had just separated from his wife. My mother hung up with a smile I had not seen in years. Then she turned to me and said, without emotion, without hesitation, "Your brother and his 2 kids are coming to live with us. So you need to leave. You've been here long enough." She didn't even sit down. She just said it like she was telling me to turn off the lights. For a moment, I froze. Not because I didn't expect this, but because deep inside, I had always feared it. I asked softly, "Leave? As in today?" She replied,
Yes.
"Tonight. They need space. And frankly, you being here isn't working anymore. You have to stand on your own feet." Her words hit me harder than anything I'd ever experienced. Stand on my own feet? Hadn't I been trying? Hadn't I been rebuilding myself little by little? Did she really not see my effort? Or did she just never care? The suitcase moment. There are moments in life where the world becomes painfully quiet, when the truth settles in your bones like winter frost. I walked to my room, closed the door, and looked around at the few things I owned.
Clothes.
A broken laptop, a pair of old shoes, a box of letters from a past relationship I still couldn't let go of. I slowly began to pack. Every fold of every shirt felt like a goodbye, not just to the house, but to the version of me that believed this place was home. My mother didn't knock. She didn't ask if I needed help. She stayed in the living room watching TV. At one point, I paused, hoping she'd call my name. Hoping she'd say, "Well, maybe we can figure something out." But nothing came. Just the sound of the television and the clicking of her nails on her phone screen. The last conversation. When I finally zipped my suitcase, I rolled it into the living room. She glanced at it briefly and said, "Make sure you return the house key. I don't want it getting lost." That was all. Not "take care." Not "where will you go?" Not call me when you reach somewhere safe.
Just the key.
I placed the key on the table and said quietly,
Don't worry.
You won't need to ask for it again. She shrugged and said, All right then. Close the door behind you. Not a hug. Not even a goodbye. I walked out, closed the door, and something inside me closed with it. The lonely night. That night, I sat on a bench outside a small motel I barely had money for. The air was cold. My hands were shaking, not from temperature, but from the weight of what had happened. I replayed everything in my mind. Every grocery trip, every chore, every quiet dinner. Every time I convinced myself that her silence was love, and I realized something painful. I was never a son in that house. I was a placeholder for loneliness, a live-in convenience. And when convenience expired, so did her tolerance. The next morning, I walked into the motel bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, eyes red, face tired, and whispered, Enough. Enough waiting for people to choose me. Enough begging for crumbs of affection. Enough living half a life. I found a job at a warehouse. Then another part-time job on weekends. I saved every dollar I could. I slept on a thin mattress in a rented room where the heater barely worked. But every night, I felt something I had not felt in years.
Peace.
Because this time, I wasn't living on borrowed kindness. I was living for myself. 6 months passed. I was stronger, calmer, more grounded. I had my own small apartment, nothing fancy, but clean and quiet. One evening, while making dinner, my phone rang. It was her, my mother, the same woman who didn't even walk me to the door. I watched the phone vibrate, and I let it ring, not out of revenge, not out of hatred, but because for the first time in my life, I understood something important. I don't have to answer every call that comes from someone who once hurt me. When the phone finally stopped ringing, I whispered. I may have left her house, but that night, I finally came home to myself.